Turbo 360. Today we're working on part 3 of 4 of our Instagram clone React Native application. If you've missed the first 2 episodes, we've done we set up kind of the base layout of maybe like a user feed, did some styling, learned out styling. In part 2 we used React navigation and learned more about HTTP requests, logging in, registering, that kind of stuff. And now in part 3, now that we have a actual user, what we're going to do is install the React Native camera and make it so that we can take pictures and link them to our user. And so instead of just taking a picture locally, the idea is when we take a picture, we want to send it off to a server somewhere, and that way we have access to it on our profile page, as well as other people who are friends with can see it in their feed. And it's not anything complicated, but I think we should just kind of go over the steps or what we're trying to accomplish here. So to blow this up. All right, so first you need to be able to actually take a picture, and we're going to do that with React Native camera. Second, we need to be able to, once we have this picture, we need to send it somewhere. So we're going to send the picture with fetch, and we already had some experience with that in the last video, so that won't be too new, but there's some differences there. 3, we need somewhere that's going to receive it, and we're going to do that with our Node Express API we're using. And that's going to be Turbo. And then once we receive the picture there, we're going to get a like a callback, and that is going to be a link to the CDN on Turbo. So let phone know where picture is. So what this is going to do is we're going to take our picture with React Native camera, we're going to send it off to our server where it's received. On the server, it's going to save the picture. I should put that in. So it's going to save it to the CDN, and it's going to, in the callback, let our phone know where that is. So when we get that callback, what we can do is maybe store that URL in our, let's say, our profile feed or something. So it'll automatically load in our profile. But next time we log in, or even a new session, we need to basically say like, hey, where's all my pictures in my feed, or where's all the pictures from my profile. So that's the last piece, is we need to relational data between photo and, we need to somehow relate it to some other endpoint that we can fetch all the photos from. So I'm going to say photo and user. So this is all going to be Turbo API. So again, hopefully you kind of see there's a couple of pieces here. And to make things even more tricky, I'm showing you this on the simulator. So some of the pictures that we take are going to be, it works and all the logic is there, but there's no camera on the simulator, so it's just kind of like a black screen. So I might kind of hijack that and change some of the logic there. So it's going to be a tough video, but I think everyone can get through it. And yeah, so let's get started. I'm gonna just show you here. We have, so this library, React Native Camera, is pretty good. It does a lot of stuff, and we're not even gonna go into all of it. But like I was just looking at today, as of now, they can do, where is it? Oh, here you go. Video, photograph, face detection, barcode scanning, and text recognition if you're on Android. So it's a pretty like full-featured camera, and it's very easy to install. And I just want to make a point for the Expo users, because I'm pretty sure Expo has a camera component, because we're going to have to do some native linking of the modules, which if you're running on Expo you can't do. But if you go to camera, just Google like Expo camera, they have a special component that you can use, and it's going to be some of the same ideas. So like right here, import camera from Expo. So you guys can use that, and I'm just going to use the other one because that's what I would do if I was on a regular native app. Everything else, the hard part is like this part here, the whole flow and structure. The easy part is basically, you know, installing it and trying to figure out where to find the file and stuff like that. So you just Google here, or it's on the Expo docs. Use their camera if you're using like Create React Native app. Everyone else, you can follow along, and I'm going to be using iOS. If you're using Android, there might be a slight difference or two, but nothing too crazy. But again, the docs here are very good. It's a very popular library, so if you're on Android, like you'll see there's one or two differences in your, it's like when you set your permissions, it'll be different, but you can just come in here and do that. It should be pretty easy. Yeah, I say iOS is more confusing. So, okay, yeah, I mean they're both pretty easy. Basically, you just have to give these like these keys, they're key value pairs. Same idea in Android and iOS, saying we need permission for the camera, and you know why do we need permission for the camera, that type of thing. So it's pretty simple, and you guys should be able to follow along. And if you're on Expo, you don't do anything native, just check these docs. All right, so first up, I'm going to open up our project from the other day, and I'm going to run. I'm not even going to run the project because when we have to edit some of those keys, we have to recompile. So I'm going to do that first. So install, and let me zoom in so you guys can see. There we go. React Native Camera. All right, and then you're going to run React Native link, just like this. And so back in the day, maybe like a year ago, you had to do a lot more manual steps, but like this React Native link automatically does a lot of the linking for you. Sometimes if you go to run it, you can run into problems based on maybe some other things set up in your project. If you do have problems, most libraries give you, I'm trying to pull it up here to show you, give you like the manual installation instructions. So right here, mostly automatic install to React Native. This is what we just did. And if you run into issues, there's this manual install, and you'll see it's much more, it's a little more difficult, but it's not that hard. This is the one step that's not manual here. We have to add in these keys I was talking about. So I'm literally going to copy and paste these. And if you go into your iOS, project name, info.plist, you'll see you have this list of these like key value pairs already. And if you like collapse right here, it's a dictionary. So we just need to be inside this dictionary. It's kind of like an array or an object. So right down here, and just add all these files. And if you look, camera usage description, your message to user when the camera is accessed for the first time. So we could like set something here, like, do you want to be allowed to use the camera? Same thing here, you know, for accessing the photo library. And microphone, I guess you're making a movie. And so like the reason we have to do that React Native linking is like we're using stuff now like on the more native side. So usually you can guess when you have to use, go into kind of the native side, like you know, anything with permissions and you know, if you want to access contacts, stuff like that, you might have to do little stuff like this, but it's very easy. And again, if you're on Android, oh, sorry, we're missing one key actually. And we have to, as of iOS 11, use this one here. If we want to use the camera roll, which we might. If you don't put these in, your app will crash, by the way. So after you have those in there, what you want to do is rerun React Native Start and React Native iOS. And it's going to take a minute or two, so I'll do that, and I'm going to open up the Android one quick. Okay, so while that's running, let me see what the Android one says. And don't mind us scrolling for a second. Okay. I believe that, so in the instructions actually don't even tell you where to do it, but I believe it goes in Android app. Settings. So look, see here, this include React Native camera. That is one of the steps if you do it manually, but because we did React Native link, it wrote this for us. So it does a lot of the stuff like that. Give me 1 second, just looking for where these keys. Yeah, okay. I believe it's in here. Here, okay, so go to your app, source, main, Android manifest.xml, and you'll see here they have some other keys. Uses permission, system alert window. Just paste that in here for the camera. And if you want to do some of the other stuff, video recording, external storage, just do that right here. So you'll see there's other ones right above it. So just add those to your, again, Android app source Android manifest.xml, and save that. And again, if you're on Android, run React Native on Android. I'm not going to open both right now just because the QuickTime with that and the iOS simulator, I think my computer will actually go on fire. I'm not sure if you could hear it, but the fan's going pretty crazy right now. So once you have that working, the app's starting, which is a good sign, and then remember to log in or sign up. All right, and we go to this camera tab. It is currently empty. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull down the docs right here. Where are they? And ironically enough, they have their like example app. They call it bad Instagram clone app. But anyway, so just go to the docs here, and what we're gonna do is let's just take this whole take picture async return. All right, I'm just gonna take their whole example here because it's decent, and copy and paste it. Flash mode permission. Okay, so come back to our source directory and go to screens, camera, and I'm just going to take everything here. It's pretty much the same setup how we've been doing everything. And I'll even take their styles for now. Normally I don't copy and paste because it's bad practice and such, but we're kind of using this pre-built component, so it's not, I don't see it as the end of the world. And we've gone over a lot of this stuff, so it's pretty much the same we've been doing. One slightly thing different is they have, they're using these async functions, which is a new JavaScript feature. But it's pretty, it should all be readable. But anyway, let's change our name here to camera, and also we're making a great Instagram clone, so we don't have to worry about that. And make sure you're matching down here your export. So if you look, they have this. They're importing RN camera from that package we installed. Has styles, type constants.type.back. Not sure what that is. I'll check the docs. Some flash mode, a permission dialog. Like it's nothing too crazy or unique here. Let me see what that type back is real quick. Type. Oh, okay. That's the front or the back camera. So I already tried this before and it wasn't working with the simulator. Let me try front. I don't think the simulator is hooked up to use the screen here, but you never know. So that's pretty cool. You can use the back or the front camera. Maybe you want to add a button to flip it or something, but like that's where you would do it right here. But I think the important thing is here on this take picture function. So here we have the button where we bind that take picture. Right here, this console log data.uri, that's the most important thing for us right now. I'm just going to log this data here. So I'm going to refresh this. And you'll see this black screen. So it's actually appears to be working. My assumption does not work with the simulator because there's no camera, and I don't think they're running it through the camera here. But so what we want to do is when we hit this button, we want to see what's logged here and try to get kind of an idea of how everything kind of fits together. So what I'm going to do is let me make sure debugging is on. Okay, so remember Command D or Command M if you're on Android, and turn on your debugger. And let me pull that down here. All right, and now watch what happens when we take this picture. So we get this base 64 string, which, so if you're not familiar, like when you're rendering the URL, like from a web page or something, that's like a link to an image. There's also this this thing called like a base 64 URL, and basically it turns your photo or something into this giant like character string, and you're supposed to be able to like reconstruct images based on like the byte stream. but we want to get the actual file. So if you look right here, we actually, and again, this is all linked to my computer because it's on the simulator, but there is a link to an actual file. And what we want to do is we want to be able to send that off to our backend. So that's kind of the next step. Now we can take these pictures and trying to think. But like I said, this is obviously like a pretty ugly looking picture. So actually, just whenever I grab this URL, what happens? So look here. There's actually some photo linked here, so it's working. The thing is, do we want to make an Instagram clone with this as the pictures while I'm doing it on the simulator? Like if you're on your device, it's fine because you can take real pictures. But I might like kind of hijack that and insert some other pictures or something. But we'll get to that when needed. But this is good. So we have access to this file. And now if we go back to our list here, take picture, done. Now we want to send this picture off. So we're going to use fetch, and we have to receive the picture somewhere. So we need to also open up our API that we were working on the other day and basically make a route to receive the pictures. So I'm going to do that real quick. I think I have it open. Hold on. Okay, so now we're in our Turbo project, and if we look last time we made a sign up, a login, and I'm going to make this one called photo new. And what we're going to do is pass the photo, and we also want to pass our user ID. So when it makes the photo, it knows whose photo it is. And then when we log in on Instagram, it'll pull up to our profile, only our old photos. So let's make a new route. Router dot, what's this? Router dot post resource. I'm wondering if we want to pass in the ID here or something as well. I think that would be a good idea. So we could post to our own route. So again, this is a variable here. So we're going to do post to our account. So I'm going to call this /users /ID and then photo. Okay, that should be good. Then we need to give it a callback of what to do. And for now, let's just log our entire request. And let's just log this ID, make sure we're getting that. So rec.params.id. So what we're doing here is we want to log this ID, make sure that's coming through as we expect for our user's ID. And then we're logging this whole request. I'm going to try to look through it and see where exactly our photo is located when we actually send it. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to run this on my local host for now. So it's Turbo Dev Server. And just to make sure it's running, I'm just going to type in localhost 3000. Welcome to Turbo. Okay, so it appears to be running. And let's go back to our project real quick And because remember we were posting to the web, we want to, in the meantime, while I'm running this locally, just change this to use our local host, just because it's going to be easier to read our console logs and help us kind of figure out how we want to kind of parse this picture. So go back to that config file, and right here we have this local host. So let's just do this. And let's go to our camera. And by the way, we're going to write another fetch function if anyone's thinking like, oh, this is another one, we should kind of extract this somewhere. That's probably more in like maybe like a React Native Redux video, but just because it's more about less about layout and more about kind of organizing our data, we would extract them to just like a utility class. We only have one fetch in one place. That way, if we need to change the library or something, we can just swap it out. So basically, we know this is working here, console.log the data. What we want to do is right in here, we want to, this is where we're going to do a fetch. And fetch is the name of the networking library we've been working with. It's very confusing because people also refer to fetch when they're getting data, but we're also obviously posting data. So we'll import fetch from fetch. And I'm just going to look at the login was a post. Oh, we don't even have to, it's just a native, we don't have to import it actually, sorry. I'm going to register one, it's more stripped down. So let's take that function and jump back here and paste that, and again, sorry, get rid of this up here. We don't need it. All right, so we also need to import our config, sorry. Okay, so our route is going to be, we decided was slash users, ID, and photo. Okay, so first problem here is we don't know our user ID, and the way we get that is on login. So this will be the perfect example of something you would store in Redux and we could just access, but that's kind of the whole, like I said, its own series. So what we do need to do though is go back to our, I'm trying to think how we want to do this in the best possible way. So if you go to the top component where we actually kind of like declare our app, is that here? Instaclone. Okay. So we're gonna have to store some state in here and just keep kind of, it gets kind of passed down. Is the best way to describe it. Sorry, I'm trying to think of how I want to do it. Let's just skip this for now because it's gonna get too complicated with the navigators. Again. There is a method you could use with the navigation, set params. We can use that. So basically, it kind of puts this state in our nav library. So let's do that real quick. So if you come to here to our plugin, see where we navigate to the main, we can pass in some params. And again, I don't usually do this, so I believe it's route name, params, And I'm just going to put a random parameter in here just to see if this is working. Test, test. So this is just some way to pass data between our screens. So again, you just pass this argument into our nav library. And if I come to that takes us to our main page. So we got to pass it again. You're already going to get to see how annoying this is, which is why everyone likes Redux and whatnot. So then in our main page, we have to pass this again. But we navigate on our tab. So sorry guys, I'm just thinking. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to do like a quick way to not have to use Redux and all that, but at the same time, it's getting very tricky to keep it simple. So just give me a second while I come up with a quick, easy way to do this so we don't get sidetracked with things we don't want to talk about in this series. Hold on 1 second. Guys, I'm back, and also I was gonna order some delivery, so if my doorbell rings, I'll probably have to pause again. So what we can do is use something very similar to this to kind of get us through this. And there's a lot of things about React navigation that I don't like, but at the same time, it's not really an easy solution. But so here we were kind of setting these params and saying navigate to main and pass these params. The problem is that our actual components here, if you remember, are nested in main, so the props didn't get passed through. And you could do some reconfiguring here to pass those props through, but I was just trying while I paused to make sure it worked. What we can do is here, instead of navigating to main, we can, in our, if you check our our route names, let's just use feed, for example. We want to go to camera. So again, it's less than ideal, but just know that this will be something very easily handled with Redux, or if you do some reading in the React navigation docs, there's some ways around it. It's just not something we want to spend an hour on right now. But what we can do is just pass it on login, and just unfortunately for now, our first screen we go to is going to be the camera. So if you go to, login. Okay, if you go back here where we're navigating to main, we want to change this to a specific screen in our main stack, which is going to be camera. And if you save that, and right here we have this params test. We just want to pass in this whole JSON response. Which I'm going to call user, or response. I think we probably want to just pass the user, but for now, let me just do this to see what we have, and we'll strip out just the right key in a second. All right, so let's go back to camera, and this is going to crash. And we're in the middle of this. We had it like this. So I'm just going to comment out this whole fetch string for now, and let's go up here and let's do a component mount. Let's say console.log this.props.navigation.state.params.user, and that should work. Let's find out. Okay. Let's refresh this. I don't know why my app froze up, so give me a second. So I think something is not properly launching. So let me check our console. So far it's okay. Component to mount. Okay, so it's working. Let me pull up that console again. And I'll clear this out and let's log in. Okay, so this is what we want here. So we want to only pass this. See how this is getting called on line 15 of camera right there. So we only want the data key, and I think we for now only want this user ID. So I'm going to just pass in .data.id. And so like for example, this would be something where when we get to the Redux series, which again not this series, you would just store, when you store in the user, you would store that in like a global state, and everyone can access that data. So you just have access to it, and then if you're logging in or registering, you store the data in the same place. But now for us, we're gonna have to pass the same thing on register perhaps. Like these are the things that Redux helps to solve, or just kind of actually any state management library. MobX, they're always changing what's popular, but that's kind of the idea of why you want a state management library. But you can't really learn why you need it until you see some of like the pain points. So I think it's okay to kind of do the series this way. But like just for example, now on register, we have to handle for this case. We have to literally copy and paste the same logic, or yeah, instead of just storing it in one place, and then login or camera always gets it from the same place. So that's kind of what that would do. But anyway, let's go back here. So our console log is working here, and what we actually want to do is we want to store this because every time we change tabs, we're going to want access to that parameter. And so what we want to do is just set state. To be honest, we probably could just keep referencing it here, but I'd rather just keep it in the component state. And let's just call it user ID. Actually, we can just do this right in the constructor. Is probably the best. So just grab this, and this way you don't have to check for null. There's always going to be this value here. So because it takes place in the constructor of the function. Okay, so now we can scroll down to here, and let's put that into our URL. This .state.user ID. All right. Photo post. Okay, so for the body, well, let's just put in a random param for now. And I actually I changed kind of how I want to do this, so I'll get to that in a second. But I stopped and restarted the recording. So if yours is slightly off here, I apologize, but I tried to match it up exactly. But let's just throw in right here some random phrase. And what our goal is right now, so let's get rid of this, all these then, catch, etc. What our goal is now is we just want to see if when we take this picture, we can hit our endpoint and we send some kind of data. And now, when I first started this, the third step here was going to send, second, third step, send pic and receive pic. I actually found out that with Turbo, you can post directly to the CDN, and then what we're going to have to do is send that data to our API. So it's going to be a slight change, but this is kind of more, I guess, best practice because you don't want to be busying your server with file uploads, and I just didn't realize that it was a option on Turbo. So now that I know that, we're going to do it that way. But in the interim, we just want to make sure that we can get some kind of data here to our test server. So, and that'll also tell us this is all hooked up correctly, but I'm going to store this response here. Await fetch. All right. And then I'm going to flip over to my, I'm going to refresh this quick and flip over to my other page here where I have our API running. And all I want to do is just log correct.params. Just all I want to do is basically my whole goal is to make sure that we're hooking this up properly. Cannot read property navigation of undefined. Okay, hold on one second. This is why we do this one step at a time. Okay, so make sure you pass your props into your constructor, otherwise you won't have access to them. Just like that, so props. And if I jump back, here, hope you guys can see okay. So right here, we're getting our user ID. So this works on our picture. We're able to send a request, which is great, but we're not sending the actual picture. So that's kind of what we need to do here. And the reason that I'm sending this to the API is because what we're going to want to do is when we send that picture on our callback, we kind of want to get a URL with all of the user's profile pictures. So by sending it to this API, we have more flexibility in what kind of response we receive. And so that's what I want to do now is basically send the picture off to CDN, then let the API know, and the API is going to let us know what other pictures we have. And the nice thing there is it's going to all automatically update. So when you post your profile picture, you can check the tab and it'll be updated right there. So what we want to do is install the Turbo client SDK. So npm install Turbo 360, and you need to get your app ID from your app. So I'm going to open a new window quick. And there's an app ID right down here. And what you want to do is, once this is installed, import Turbo from Turbo 360. And then I'm pretty sure I have the syntax right here. It's const turbo equals, so you gotta create an instance of the turbo class, and it needs your site ID, which is that string we just grabbed. So this knows how to send it to your site specifically. Site ID. Okay, and then we're going to comment out our working request for now. We're going to use that in a second. Because first we need to get our URL that we want to pass back to the server. And again, you can also upload directly to a server, but it's not preferred. So this is kind of the better way, the more common way. Basically, you're going to get a callback URL with our image, and we send that to the server. And then you're not busying up your server that deals with more important data and tasks with just pure like file uploading, which we're sending to a specialized service instead. So I'm going to do turbo.upload, and we need the file. So I believe that we need a URI, a name, and a type. So the type is going to be image/JPEG. Name is going to be whatever we want. Then the URI is the tricky part here. So let's just check this data that we're already logging and see what we have. My debugger on. All right, here's a debugger. And let's see what this file looks like. Okay. So here we have this URI. That's really all we need. I think we're just going to use our own name and type. So it's just going to be data dot right here, this URI. So this is an exact file. Data dot URI. Then response. and catch. All right, let's give this a try, see what happens. Okay, so we have something wrong with our turbo import. Let's see, turbo.upload. Is it turbo.new? Oh, you know, it's turbo.config. Okay, sorry, that's just a syntax mistake. So we use config is our proper method there. Turbo.config is not a function. Okay, so I just checked the docs, and it's actually just like that. So now we have our turbo instance, and it's also upload file. So let's try that, see how we're doing. Reload. And let me find my debugger. Okay, oh, nice. Look, so right here, confirmation success. This is our callback from the file upload. And if you look here, we have a URL, which if I take this URL, that is our picture we just took. So this is what I was talking about earlier. It's not as exciting on the simulator, but we just uploaded from our camera directly to a CDN and received the link back. So it's pretty cool. And if you're on a real device, I should give it a try. You'll get your link to your picture. So it's pretty neat. But now we have this link, and it's kind of we just sent it to a CDN and got a callback. So we got to do something with it. So again, remember this is I said I switched it around. So send pic, save pic, send pic to CDN, receive pic URL, send to turbo. Okay. And we're going to let phone know where all pictures. Okay, so the same idea, we just going to CDN before we go to our database. So we got this callback. This basically is like lost for us now. So what we need to do is console response. So what we want is response dot result dot URL. Yep. So that, see that we have that here. Let's take that and send it to our server, and we're going to do that in here. So first, I think we can do const turbo equals that. I'm going to say const image URL equals await turbo.upload file. Result.url. And then we want to do this one here. And we just want to change our body here. I'm just going to say image URL, and it's going to be cdn response dot results dot URL. Let's give this a try. And just to see if we're feeling ambitious, let's jump back to our backend here, and we're going to also log the rec.body, because that's where this lives in the body of our post. So we're logged in, and let's give this a try. All right, so you'll see right here, we got our image URL successfully sent to our backend. So to reiterate, we take our picture, go straight to our CDN, we get our callback, and then we take that callback and we send it to our server here. And now that we're in our server here, we want to do something with it. So we're basically going to create a record in our data store. It's another feature of Turbo. It's like a Mongo database with like a pretty simple abstraction on top. And like here we had create user. I think it's very similar. I think it's just create. So what we want to do is and alternatively, we could have just sent the user ID as the body, but I'm going to leave it how it is for now. I kind of like demonstrating both params and the bodies. Plus, it really should be, you're updating the user's photos, so it really should be like a param here. But so what we want to do is we're going to make a photo object. And see here how we have this rec.body. So we want to say URL is going to be rec.body.image URL. And then we also want to tie it to a user, so we know who the user is. So I'm going to say user is going to be rec.params.id. And then turbo.create. I'm going to call it a user post. Let's call it photo for now. And pass that in. log the response, and let's log our error. And let's give that a try, see if it works. So we don't even need to reload because these changes are all on the back end. So just repost that photo, and it seems to be working because right here we get a schema, timestamp, ID, URL, user. So it was created, and we actually go to our Turbo data store. Hey guys, sorry for the sudden change of scenery. I'm not sure if you could tell in the middle of the video there was like some construction going on next door. So apparently someone is doing construction in my apartment, so I'm in my office now. Yeah, sorry for that, but I want to make sure I deliver a good video and good sound quality and whatnot. So anyway, let's go back to Turbo, and if we go to our home page and we go to our apps, we can go to our data store, and you will see this photo entity has been created. So as we saw in our console before, that is working. So if you open the photo, when was this created? Let's see if I can just create one right now. Make sure nothing got lost in transit. So I just created these right now, and you'll see there's this user ID, which is the one we've supplied. So now we know which ID is ours, and this URL. And there's our photo and the timestamp. So that is all hooked up and working, which is good news. So now what we want to do is we go back to our API here. We are creating it, and then we're not doing anything. We're not giving a response to the client side. So like a typical pattern might be to create the photo and then just send back the one photo success with the link, maybe the ID of the entity relationship. But we have to think in terms of our app, how we want to do it. So I'm going to reload our app for a second so we can talk about kind of what we need to think about. And a lot of this stuff is specific to the way we are making our app, as in we're not using any type of state management library. And so we, for example, when these components mount here, our tab navigator components, they only mount one time. So they're already mounted, if you will. Now, our feed here is supposed to be all of the posts, right? So this we won't deal with yet. That we'll get to. That's like something where you'd have like a pull to refresh, and we could just manually request all the posts. I think that's going to be the last video. But what we need to do is our profile here, because we should be able to, if we successfully post something that we want to be like one of our pictures, we want to go to like our profile page, and we should have all the other profile pages, profile pictures in there. So it's just about how do we want to, like for example, we can't just say, okay, we took our picture, and then I click here, component did mount, fetch all our photos, right? Like that's not accurate. So this is something you would normally store in like Redux. So you would have kind of this global store shared between, so right now basically each tab is its own screen. They can't really talk to each other, except like before we did that navigate to that page and pass those params. But what we want to do is basically make them share some kind of data. And so if you had Redux, what it would do, or any kind of state management library, is they share this data. So from our camera, we could just say, hey, the list of photos you have add one to it. I just got a success callback, and if we come over here, it's already in there. Well, we can't do that in our current project. It's just this is just like the beginner tutorial. That'll be in the next project. We'll do some stuff like that. So we need some way to get this data to this tab. So what I'm thinking is using a navigation method. So there is a method called tab did focus, or there's some method. We'll check the docs to basically find out when we focus on one of these tabs. And so what we're going to do is, when we get a success callback here, we're going to navigate to the profile component and pass in the our callback, the same as how in login we passed in the params. We're going to do a similar thing to our profile page, except in profile we're also going to add a listener so it knows when it focuses, and it can check and say, you know, if it focused and there's those params, add them to its list of profile pics. And in addition to that, the profile tab is on its first mount going to fetch all the profile pics. So I think the first thing to do is kind of jump back over to the profile tab. And let's just give it a component in mount. This is kind of going to build up our base store of our profile photos. And I'm not sure if we're going to do too much styling here. I think that might be the final video. Kind of style it all and like tighten it up, get that, pull the refresh in the feed. This is more about the data, this video. So and I wanted to basically show you something here. So now you're going to see that the component mounts right away with the tab navigator. They all mount right away. So once we log in, even though we're not focused there, it's already mounted. So we can't use that life cycle method, is my point, to check for various things. All we can really do is, where is it? Okay, so sorry, I'm slightly mistaken, but my point is it doesn't, so lazy loads, it doesn't mount it until needed, which is half what I was saying, but it doesn't remount is my point. So each time we click it, we're not remounting. See, like that first time we got this console log here. So what we want to do is in that mount method, we're going to fetch all of the photos. And what I'm trying to explain is we don't want to, every time we click the tab, get all of the pictures. That's just not efficient, like for our profile pictures. But what we've discovered is that there's only this one-time mount, so that's like the perfect method to just that one time get the pictures. But then from there on in, my point is we're on our own. So we take a picture in the camera, snap, go back. We're not remounting, so that's what we need to handle. So I'm gonna trying to decide if, because there's also we can write our API calls, or there's also these custom turbo methods. I think I'm just gonna make an API, simple API call and a custom method in our turbo API. Just gives us more flexibility. But let's go to our login again, and let's just grab this fetch. Import config. So we got to make an endpoint here, and if we go back to our API, they actually give us some default ones which we hijacked, but this is kind of what we want. The sample API route, so it's /API/resource. So we're going to do /API/ photos, and we'll filter by our ID in the query string here. So this is the route we're using right here. Console.log rec.params.resource, and so it already exists. So change this to a get. This is going to be, do they call it photo or photos? Photo. And then the body. This is another example of, I don't really remember is it query? So we're not passing a body, that's on a post. I think we can just do query, but let me check. Fetch query string. That does not look right. They want to just put them in the string, which I do not think we want to do. Oh, or I guess I'm wrong. So we need to construct our own query string, which I don't really particularly like or get why we're doing that, to be honest. But I guess that's what fetch requires. Like super agent stuff have an Axios, all have methods to do that for you with a little cleaner UI, but we've already decided to use fetch, so I guess we'll have to make our own. So to reiterate, a query string is going to be something like and ID equals, and now this is pretty easy because the IDs are just IDs, but let's just say we had multiple parameters and user ID, then we gotta do this end, or let's say we want to allow for a bunch of parameters. It gets a little hairy, or spaces. You gotta substitute %20. So all this stuff, like I'm sure you've seen in a URL, like this %20 substitute for space. But for our purposes right now, we're just trying to pass the user ID, so it'll work fine. Otherwise, you might need some other library to help parse your string. Anyway, though, so our route is going to be plus photo and ID equals, and this could actually be a good use of the ES6 backticks. So, for example, we would do something like, we have like a lot of extra logic. So if you do like these backticks, like to the left of the one, that character, and you can then do, I think they're called string, I think it's called the string literal or string templates or something, but you can do like this. And so this, it basically will evaluate this expression, just drop it right in, and then we can do the same thing here with some variable that we don't have yet. This is the same thing we were kind of working with before, like in camera we had to pass in that variable. So trying to think how we want to do that. It's kind of annoying. Okay, so let's just comment this out on our camera. Sorry, on our profile. And let's just see if what params we get on when we mount. So I don't think these I don't think they persist after one navigation is my point, but let's find out. See, this is undefined as opposed to before on the camera when we had access to it. Alright guys, I've decided what we are going to do. There's kind of a way to globally bind certain items in the navigators called screen props, but this one we have to do a lot of rewriting here and move some of like our login methods and stuff to kind of log in here and then pass in certain data and whatnot. And additionally, from last time I was working on a project, I'm under the impression that it's soon to be deprecated because it's not best practice and it's just not really preferred. So after all this, and I actually feel okay about doing it, we're going to, at the start of video 4, do a Redux setup. And I think it's okay because we've kind of seen why it's like kind of hard for these components to talk to each other and stuff like that. So I'm comfortable doing that, and it wasn't the plan, and it'll make everything much better. So for the intern, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna just pass in our ID, and then in the next video we'll make that dynamic. But for now, pass it in and fetch our photos. So if we go back to our profile, super. So whatever user you've been using and has been creating these photos, if you're unsure, you can just go to your dashboard. So for example, for me, I've been logging in as ryan@aol.com as this ID. The same as if I go to my photo, yeah, all the same user right here. So I'm just going to take this ID, and in the next video we will change that. Super state. Okay, and then over here we can uncomment this out, and we're going to say some var is going to be this.state.user. I'm going to call it user ID for now. Get rid of this navigation stuff for now. And for our purposes for now, let's just log this JSON response. And photo and ID. So let's jump back to our API. And We already have this set up to log the resource, which should be photo. Try to make sure I have it set up right. It's /API/photo. Okay. And the reason we know that /API is if you go to your app.js and you see here line 13 app.use API. So, and then it assigns this file we're working in to the API variable. So everything in this file, these routes are already prefixed with /API/resource like that. Although, sorry, I think we in our index we already, okay, so ignore me, we already have that API in our config. So all right, so let's just run this component in mount, see if we see anything on our dev server here. So I don't see anything there, so router.get/show may not have went through. So let's jump back. Fetch config database URL. Oh, sorry, we're hitting the server right now. Let's jump back to our local host so we can see our console. All right, so you can see that, and let's see if, okay, so we got this get request to API //photo and ID equals this. So this here is going to be a problem. So we have this extra slash here. I'll zoom in. So let's jump back to our InstaClone profile. Config.base URL. Let's try that. So that last backslash was already in our config, I think. So to get API photo. So that went through. Actually, now that I'm looking, I think the last one went through. I just saw this and did not think it looked right, but it must have handled it on the back end for us. So I'm fine fixing that. But here you have our query string that we constructed and our params. So what we're going to do is take this query, so it's going to be rect.query.id. We want that ID. And we want this resource photo. So I'm going to say const, this is an ES6 JavaScript thing, so we can do that. And rect.query.id. I'm just going to pass in the whole query. I'm going to try that. Const query equals rec. And what we're going to do is we want to fetch all of our pictures. So let's do fetch. And instead of photo, we're going to just pass in this resource variable. And I'm going to pull up the documentation here. Data store, fetching. Again, this is fetching objects. It has nothing to do with the fetch HTTP, XML HTTP request library we're using. Resource name and query params. Query. Yeah, so here they're passing the whole query. So let's give that a try. And I think it should work. So resource, query, then data. So we don't even have to reload our, well, we need to mount again, so we do need to reload. And let's see if we see anything down here. So what we would expect to see is hopefully a list of photos, an array. Because right now, so basically now we're searching the backend for all of the photos. And so our request went, but we didn't find anything. I think we might, we probably call it user ID on the back end. We gotta make sure our query string matches. Photo. Oh, we call it the user. So let's jump back to, we could either change it on the server side, or we could just pass in the correct query string on the client side. So let's just do that. Let's try that. Equals user. Let's refresh. Pull up our terminal. And all right, cool here. So look at all these photos we're getting back. So just again to reiterate, we're passing our own user ID to the backend, which we hard-coded for now because of some difficulties with React navigation and passing data. But we pass that ID to the backend, and then on the backend we get the ID and we query for all the profile photos for that user. And we just console log them right here. Now what we need to do, and again to go back to the other day, let phone know all pictures, we need to actually render that as a response. And we changed this order a bit, but we already have this relational data between the phone and the user, so we just have to send back these pics and then we're done. So right here we want this res block. This is just if you guys are like learning mobile and don't know a lot of backend stuff, is kind of just standard like basic express. I would say learn it if you can. Catch error. Okay, so here data. I'm going to call this data and I'm going to pass in this data. And then if we get an error, I'm going to change this confirmation to fail. And message, sorry, something went wrong. And we got return out usually. All right, so let's just save this, and let's see here with this JSON response what that looks like. Are we getting this data back? So pull up your debugger now on the client side. And we get confirmation success. Again, we literally just wrote this method on the back end and data with all our data. So what we're going to do is we want to take this array of data, and again, because we're not into Redux land yet, which is okay, we're going to set state with this response here. I'm going to say profile pics. It's going to be JSON response, and we're going to give this a starting value of just empty. And the reason we do that is because I'm going to basically now iterate through the array in our render block, and before the HTTP request is complete, it's going to be say, hey, render all the profile pictures in state. If we don't give anything, it's just going to crash. But if we give that empty block, it'll render through the array, which is empty, so it won't crash. And just to see if it's working, let's just do touchable opacity. Let's change this to a view. And what they have a URL, right? This time save data. So if we save that data, okay, we just want to also here just do dot data, just that key, this array here. We don't want this part. And then for each one of these, let's just render, right, because we have the text right there, let's just render the URL and see what we get. So this dot state dot profile pics dot map. State, what did I? Let's just put in the pic.url. And it's one of those days where this test state. There we go. One of those days where just kind of lose concentration. And okay, so basically we're going to loop through the array, and like I was saying before, it's empty for now, so when it first loads, nothing. And if it does work, once that response is complete, it should show 6, 7 links with those URLs. So again, we're calling this in componented mount, so when we first click it, it's not already running. Again, this would be if you were using Redux and maybe you want to you want to have that tab already ready, right on login, you want to fetch that stuff, so it's already there. For us, it's not going to be there. And then you see that there was that lapse. So again, we log in, and our component has not mounted. That's just due to the way the tab navigator is set up. And there is an option for turning off or on lazy load, actually, now that I think about it. But so right now it hasn't mounted. So when we click it, the screen's going to be blank because we're looping through an array in our state here of nothing. Profile fix is empty. Then as we get the response, we loop through we're basically in our render block. Again, if you're not very familiar with React, we just basically say, hey, for our view, just loop through and show all of the picture URLs. And we're always going to show all the picture URLs. And then in our state, we basically decide, well, what are the picture URLs? And our rendering automatically reflects that. So when we first click here, the important thing to know is that it's empty because our array is empty. And once our response completes asynchronously, it populates our state, and this automatically responds. So again, just watch that like empty screen for a second. And just to, what do I want to do now? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty neat. We're getting all these photos now. So we want to actually render these photos, and then we want to be able to actually take the picture. And when we take the picture, to add to this list automatically. So let's go back to our, well, first, this is kind of hard to see any changes, so let's just turn these into images real quick. Let's import an image. Style sheet, we're going to need. And I'm just going to change this to an image. Source equals, and remember, you have to say, if it's a network image, URI. URI, pick that URL. Should be able to have this self-close, yeah. This will probably just be a big mess because I believe they're screen-sized images. Well, it's not rendering them, so feed. Yeah, so it should be URI. I think I should give some default height or something. Pick that URL, and I'm just going to console log right here. Pick that URL, make sure that's working. I think it just needs, I think it needs a height, some sort of height, or it won't even render. So let me just do that quick too. Width 400, let me just do that. All right, so there we got some pictures. So it's working. Obviously, styling there is bad. So let's just do this. Let's give it a container here. Styles dot profile pic container. Let's come down to make our style sheet as usual. going to say we want it to have a width of 100% of the screen and flex direction row. Let's try that. And let's give these guys a style. Profile pick, thumb. And I'm going to give them a width of 33% for now. I don't feel like adding any more flex wrapping boxes for the time being. Basically, we can make a row and put the 3 in and each give them a flex of 1. I'm just going to try this and see if that works. And again, they're gone because we don't have any. We don't have any height on them. Oh, and these guys need a key. So we're going to use key equals pick.id. Let's get rid of this. Height. I just want to see if this works, but I think you can do height undefined. And it should automatically scale if I remember correctly. Which I guess I did not. Profile pick thumb. I probably should have just gotten rid of this login screen, so I have to do this 100 times, but so there's our images. So the good news is they're showing up, but we want this row to wrap. All right, so all we need to do is in our profile down here in our container, we just have to add flex wrap to wrap. And then this is the tricky part. But I remember last time we used the image resizer with Turbo. We're going to use that again because we're already fetching these images right here. So we're just going to kind of edit this URL to include the cropping so it's automatically a square. And what we want to do is make sure that we wanted exactly 1/3 the screen. So what we're going to do right here is we can just say const third equals, and then we need to import dimensions. And I'm pretty sure we did the same thing in the feed, but dimensions dot I believe it's get, there we go, window dot width, console.log. So it should be 125, I think, on the iPhone 6 or whatever we're on. So we'll just pull back open our debugger. All right, so that's there, 375. Oh yeah, that's what I was doing before. It's not part of this. Okay, so we're just gonna say const. Well, this should be let. Then I'm gonna say. Actually, we could just do this. All of this divided by 3. And then you can use these backticks again. So pick that URL, and then the cropping, I'm going to just pull up the docs. I believe it's like S and then the S for squares, like for automatic thumbnail. Okay, so this is the syntax right here. We just attach at the end. So and instead of 120 here, I'm going to do our third variable for the size. So let's give that a try. And I'm just going to leave these undefined, the height and width, and see what happens. It should be the exact size we need, but sometimes the rules are a little funny and not whatnot. So I don't think they like no default size. So unfortunately, we'll just give this here, this third. We're going to move this to our global property here, and we can say this dot third because it's not going to change. Our screen size is fixed. And then down here, this dot third, and I wonder if these have access to a class variable. Well, we can just do it and find out. I don't think we do have access to them, but before I say no, let's check. He's probably coming in undefined. Basically, React Native does not like unknown sizes on network images. That's what kind of our issue is here. Image key. So here they are, and again, I just manually assigned these. So I think we need to provide some sort of height. We can do percentage or but basically the way the layout engine works, we can't leave the height unassigned. So I'll just do the same expression right here. It's not good to repeat yourself, but like this navy could be this actually what we should do is move this to a our index file. That is actually a good use of style constants. Now we can put one here. 1/3 width. And then we'll just do style config dot style constants dot 1/3 width. And also keep in mind we're already having the server sizes for us, so we're just saying to match the size. And like if you do, anytime you're working with like API or something, you're usually going to know the image size, so you're not going to have this issue. Like you usually know the size. So config dot style constants and we don't really need this anymore. We could just use the same right here. And I forgot the brackets here, the module import. Cannot read style constants. Oh, sorry guys. When I was pasting, I left that this is in there. Okay. Just a bad autocorrect or something. Bad pasting. All right, so there's our images, and again, they're now on the server. Is the important thing. We're getting them from the server to the exact size, and we're just rendering them that same size. We don't want to do too much image resizing locally. There's no need to stress the phone. So now what we want to do is when we take this picture here, we want this to automatically be in our profile. So if I jump back to our camera, we have this const response. And so what we're going to do is after we await fetch, we're going to navigate to the profile page with that image and have that automatically added without refetching these original 5. And that will kind of play nicely into our transition to Redux in video 4. So let's just go back to our API where we have our individual image post, and we need to give a response. So let's look at what we do for when we request the whole resource. Confirmation success, data. Let's try to keep it the same. If you're like ever designing your own API, it's very important. These like keys you want to keep consistent, because on the client side, we can always check the confirmation key or the data key and whatnot. But that's another video. And I think we have it pretty much the same. Then response, res.json, data, catch error. I'm not returning the data for now, the error for now. That's okay for our purposes. But let's post a picture now and see what our response looks like. So again, we got to jump back to the client side, and right here we're logging this response. We want to see that image URL in there. Mm. I think we need to, if you look at our profile page, there's this extra method to extract out just the body. We're getting like the whole response. So you have to call response.json. I'm surprised you don't have to request a body, but let's just try that. All right, we'll see if that works. And again, this is automatically working now. If we check that other tab, we should have another picture in there. So let's actually check. Oops, so see now that's working. So we're fetching all of the pictures. And if we go back to our data here and we snap this, I think we might be able to do this too. And again, check it out. Now I got 7. Just trying to get a clean log of this response here, but it's not really cooperating at the moment. Fetch.json. Okay, await fetch. Let's try one more thing. I wonder if this is asynchronous just based on the thens here. Then response response.json, then we'll try that. Not gonna give up. The point is we're getting it back. There we go. So when we want dot data, So we're saving all of the whole data blob in the other as the object, not just the URL. So we need this whole data blob. So I'm going to say oh wait, I already have a data over here. I'm going to change this to image data. I'll call this image data. And then down here, I want to say const data equals my JSON. So this is really just an individual photo object. And then we want to navigate. To profile. And I'm going to call this new pic, and I'm going to point to data. And then if we check the React navigation, I think we need the tab navigator. There's a listener. Give me a second, guys. It's this one. Again, I'm not familiar because I would not normally do it this way. So there's like an unfocused event that we want here. Alright, so if you go down here in the docs, they have this component did mount, and we add a nav listener, and basically it's listening for when we focus. And what I want to do is when we focus to this page, I want to see if we have anything in our params, which we're passing in from the camera. And again, this is a big pain, but it's good to show because when we migrate off of it in the next video, you'll say, wow, that's so much easier. But until you go through that kind of not that pleasant part, it doesn't really make full sense. So we already have a componented mount up there. So unmount, we need to remove our listener. Same as like any JavaScript listener, anything you would normally do. Window event listener, whatnot. Add listener to focus. And all I want to do in this listener is let's open up our debugger here. and focus that's undefined. We didn't pass any params. We want to see if this clicks again. So see, each time we hit this tab, it focuses, and that's what we want. So we have a way to basically force check. Again, we're not remounting in the tab navigator, so this is why we need this kind of workaround. If we're using Redux, we just have a pure representation of our data where we're always showing all the pictures, so we don't have to kind of keep track like this. But now if I take this picture here, okay, so when I was rewriting something before, I misspelled image. Okay. So we want to automatically navigate to that screen, and we want that passed as a param. So again, we go here, it fetches our photos, our focus for our params undefined, but let's see if this works. See, now we automatically navigated here because we defined that in our success block, and in profile JS23 right here, we have some data here of our new picture. So what we want to do is append this to the existing array, and now we're already gonna run into some issues. Again, I hate to keep repeating myself, which is why state management is so, like Redux is so useful. So we're going to append this to our array, and it works fine. But what happens if we, for example, take the picture before navigating here? We might be out of order now. So I'm just trying to show why stuff like this is difficult and why there's solutions that work well. But anyway, when we get that, I'm going to say if this, so this will return if it's null, so it won't work. Then we're going to call, we need to make a copy of the new array. Let new pics we're going to say new pics.push this data. Again, state.params dot new pic, which is the key we gave, singular, bad auto suggest there. Then we call this dot set state profile pics new pics. All right, so let's go over here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10 photos now that we're fetching. Let's define success. Success is going to be that we navigate here, and then we have an extra photo. I don't really care about the order. I just want to see one more happens. Then we know we did our job. So let's take a picture, and look, we got a new picture. Again, so it's working, but let's just go over what I said could be a potential issue. So remember, we get all our photos when the component first mounts. I wonder what happens if we take the picture before we mount. I think we're going to take one photo and it's going to get overwritten is my quick guess. So let's try it. It's going to be really quick. Reset state. Yep, that's my guess. It's too quick, so I can't really tell. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 13. So it actually is working fine, but the point is it's very not ideal. I mean, I guess it's hard to tell because we're not using any real pictures yet, but the order could be shifted, or it's just not ideally how we want to do things, which is where we're going to get to. But so before we get to our next video, I just want to give a quick recap of kind of everything that happened, because this is actually like very we did a lot in these first 3 videos, and we're going to go to like more intermediate stuff in the next series, and I just kind of want to recap, at least for this video. So when you take your picture, it goes straight to a CDN. Then we get a callback in our camera component right here. Then we send another request to the API route that we wrote. And then once we send that request to the API route, we are now tying it with our user data. So this here, this .state.user_id, that's our individual user. And so now we have some method to tie these together in the database. And then we get another response here. And this response here, we add as a param when we navigate to the profile screen. And then we add that new picture to our user profile client side. And what that does is, one, we do it in these params here because, as mentioned, we're not using Redux or state management, and we need some way to pass the data between the components that can't really talk to each other. But the reason we pass this to the screen is if you go to the profile screen here, let me refresh, this screen's responsibility, it says here to fetch all photos for the user, and the reason we pass that one photo in is we don't want to have to keep refetching all the photos. We only fetch all the photos one time, and we keep building up that store, and that kind of makes us operate faster and puts less stress on the server. So again, just to reiterate, see, now we just fetched all the photos. Now every time we take a picture, we don't want to return all the photos and re-rendering again. That's wasteful. So all we're doing, and now we're getting to the point where we're not even going to fit on the screen, so you can't really tell, is adding that to our existing store. So this is very this kind of way of operating the data is very important to React, Redux, really any client-side framework. We're trying to pass back and forth the less data that we can, and it's better for both parties involved, the server side and the client side. So I just kind of wanted to recap that. We're going to keep going over a little more as we pull in Redux and style this out and finish up the series in the next video. But this was a pretty challenging video. We kind of went over a lot. We worked the client side, server side, worked with the CDN, relationships with the data. So it's a little tough, but just follow along. We're going to clean up some of the stuff with Redux in the next video. But yeah, all right. I'll see you guys in the next video.